Layla, please tell my story. I met my boyfriend when I was 17. We started a relationship a few years after I graduated from university. The relationship moved pretty fast, and soon enough I realised that he had a problem with alcohol and drugs. Looking back now, I can see how quickly he began to manipulate me. He would make me feel like I was the one that needed to chase him, like I was the one who was constantly doing something wrong. My friends noticed that I wasn't my usual happy self, but I was insistent that nothing was wrong. I wanted them to think that I was in this perfect relationship because I was embarrassed to tell people what was really happening. After about a year, I decided that I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to end the relationship, but I found out that I was pregnant. He already had a child from a previous relationship, and I was certain that he'd be a good dad to our son. So I decided to stay and make it work with him. And how wrong I was. He made my pregnancy horrific. When I was 3 months pregnant, we were invited to a barbecue. He decided not to go, so I went on my own. This made him so mad. He was ringing my phone all night, leaving messages, screaming at me about how I was a slag, a whore, and that he couldn't believe that I would go without him. I was so upset that the next day I told him not to come to my scan with me. I really needed some time away from him. However, he turned up at the car park of the hospital, clearly still on drugs and smelling of alcohol. He was crying, telling me how sorry he was and that he really wanted to be at the scan. I was embarrassed that people were looking, so I told him to sort himself out and just come in. He stole that moment of me seeing my baby away from me because all I could think about was what the midwives thought of the state of him, and things went from bad to worse. Eventually, I was signed off sick. One day, he was putting together some drawers that we'd bought for the baby clothes. I was folding the clothes and getting excited about meeting our son. He decided that I was in his way and that I was pissing him off, so he smashed up all the drawers and left to go to the pub. And this was one of many occasions where he would smash my things or hide my stuff. He broke 3 pairs of my hair straighteners to stop me from going out, and then bought me new ones the next day. I was 5 months pregnant when he proposed to me. I said yes, knowing full well that I didn't want to marry him, but it helped paint this perfect picture of the family that I wanted everyone to think I had. I was earning a lot less money whilst I was on maternity leave, which was another thing he used as a form of control. He owned the house, but I was paying half the mortgage and half the bills, even though his salary was 5 times the size of mine. I would give it to him in cash every month, and he'd take it and go out, knowing that he'd leave me at home, heavily pregnant, with no money, no food, and nowhere to go. When he would return, I knew that it wasn't worth me questioning him. I didn't have the energy. I just wanted to concentrate on my pregnancy. He would say things like, "Go sit upstairs. I don't want to look at your disgusting face." He'd also get his eldest child not to talk to me when he visited us, and he'd say, "You never want to end up with someone like her." The first time he was physical with me was when I was 8 months pregnant. I'd gone upstairs to sit on the bed because he was in a mood. I was heavily pregnant. I just wanted to relax. He came up the stairs and decided he no longer wanted me to live in his house. This was something he always said to me, but today was different. He picked up the mattress and flipped me off it. My leg got caught in the slat of the bed and I fell forward. I was screaming at him about putting our son in danger, but he didn't care. He started telling me how it was my fault that he'd done that because I was a piece of shit. The next day, he cried and said how sorry he was and that it was a drink that made him do it and he'd never do it again. I forgave him. I just wanted to move on. The verbal abuse felt like it was never ending. He would often tell me how much his friends hated me and that they thought I was fat, ugly and disgusting. He used this to justify what he was doing to me. I was 23 years old, 9 months pregnant, and I'd obviously gained weight. I felt destroyed by this. After my son was born, he would kick me out of the house at all times of the day and night. He would return home drunk and he would demand that I leave with our baby. Sometimes I would beg for him not to kick me out, just so that I didn't have to wake our son up. One evening, he went out and I had no idea where he'd gone. I eventually told one of my brothers what was happening and he came to help me. He brought me everything that I needed and he told me that I had to leave. A couple of days later, I went back to my parents. I really wanted to leave for good. I didn't tell my parents the truth though. I just told them that I needed space from him. I tried so many avenues to get my own home for me and my son, but I was never successful. His messages didn't stop. He said he missed us and that things would be different. I wanted to believe him, so I went back. But within a matter of days, he was back to his old self, only a whole lot worse this time. And this is where the violence really began. One night, he stubbed his cigarette out on my arm, threw me on the floor and strangled me. The next day, he cried again, said he was sorry again, and that he would never do it again. But he only went on to strangle me on regular occasions, and I would be left with handprints around my neck. One day, he ripped the bathroom door off the hinges and threw it at me and strangled me until I was about to pass out. Another time, he decided again that I wasn't allowed to live in his home anymore. I was sitting on the floor and he grabbed me by my hair and started dragging me out of the room. I held onto the door frame and I was screaming at him to let go. He just started kneeing me in the face. I was left with shoulder injury from that. I was supposed to meet my mum one day. He had strangled me the night before and left a mark. When I woke up, he left the iPad open on a page that said, "How to cover your bruises," with a note to tell me to follow the instructions on the page before I met my mum so that she didn't see the marks. Fuck's sake. I started to lose my hair from all the stress. I knew I had to get help. During one attack, he threw a pot of water over me, strangling me, dragged me off the bed and slammed my head against the wall. He got off me briefly, took his top off and began hitting me again. Oh my God! I started to scream. In his rage, he'd broken his hand by punching the fridge. As always, he said it was my fault and guilt-tripped me into taking him to A&E, all whilst I was in pain and covered from the bruises that he'd given me. The final straw, though, was when he spat on my face, telling me that that's what the girl had tasted like from the night before. I knew I had to leave. It took me being spat on to realise that I was worth so much more than that. So I got me and my son ready. I left the house. I went to work and I never returned again. Eventually, after I told my local council that I was fleeing domestic violence, they helped me find somewhere to live. I had to start from scratch and I was able to find full-time work and build everything back up for myself. He tried hard to win me back, but I knew this time he wouldn't change. Even though I had left, he was using his contact with our son as a way of emotionally abusing me. He would use child maintenance against me and continue to threaten to find out where I lived to hurt me. Once, he'd booked a holiday for himself, his eldest child and our son. Last minute, he told me that he no longer wanted to take our son with him. It was heartbreaking having to break the news to him. After I got into a new relationship, he stopped seeing our son altogether. My child's mental health was really struggling during this time, and he received therapy to help him cope. Eventually, we ended up in family courts after I refused to go to mediation with him. He started making false accusations against me, so I finally reported everything to the police. I produced the evidence that I had, but the police said that my case was past the statute of limitations and therefore I couldn't press any charges. I had court papers sent to my address that were full of lies in his statement and the statements submitted by his friends. I spent most of my evenings gathering all the evidence and statements for the up-and-coming hearing, and this was the first time that I realised he had access to my address, so the police put a marker on my home. I still don't know how he got hold of it. The first court hearing came around and I was so nervous. I had to represent myself. I'd spent many sleepless nights on Google finding out the best way to present my evidence and how to word my statements, and many more internet searches about family courts. I'd requested safety precautions at the courts, including my own room, different arrival times, and security being made aware of the previous violence. The court hearing was the scariest thing I'd ever done. I had to relive some of the abuse and explain my side whilst he sat back and let his solicitor talk for him. The hearing outcome was that he would have supervised contact in a contact centre due to my accusations regarding violence, and the ball started rolling. Every hearing I had empowered me. Regardless of how hard he tried to lie and slander my name, Kafkas and the judges could see that I was telling the truth. He consistently failed drugs tests and was ordered to do a parenting course. He was trying to keep up with his lies. I just stuck to the facts, so my story remained the same throughout. He tried to drag me down in every way possible, but it wasn't working. He was losing control. In the final hearing, it was ordered that he would not be allowed unsupervised access until he passed 3 drugs tests. I was awarded residency of my son. I'm his passport holder, and I lead on his medical records, and I'm mostly in charge of everything to do with him. This is one of my greatest achievements. I walked away from that court. I walked away from the court knowing that I had done everything in my power to protect us. I was listened to and I was believed. Now I just wanted to heal. This was never about seeing my son. His intentions were to inflict further emotional abuse onto me, and his actions since then have proved this. As since the hearing, his contact with my son has been less than desirable. He still tries to gain any little control that he can. It's now been 7 years since I left him. I have a partner, and we have a child together. My life has moved on massively, but the effects of domestic violence are still very much a part of it. My partner now is incredibly patient with me and has taken the time and understanding many things which trigger my anxiety, and he is loving and kind to my son. I'm nowhere near where I want to be. I live with anxiety on a daily basis, and some days are better than others, but I'm working on myself. I wanted to share my story because, for so long, I've heard the usual comments such as, "You need to move on," but it really isn't that easy. Domestic abuse has completely changed my outlook on life and how I view myself, and it's had such massive impact on everything I do. The family courts experience was scary, but knowing that I was believed made all the difference. I'd also really love for the law to be changed around the statute of limitations for victims of domestic abuse. So please, ladies, don't ignore red flags. Please get help and get out. Please trust me when I say that things do get better.